evening, legislators. I call this regular meeting of the Westchester County Board of Legislators to order. If we all could please rise. Our legislator Sprickman leads us in the pledge to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Almighty God, give us the strength, courage, and wisdom to always act in this chamber that better for the people of Westchester County. Let us keep in mind every decision that we make impacts upon the life, health, and safety of all our great county residents. Amen. Madam Clerk.
Mr. Harkin. Here. Mr. Mazzano. Here. Ms. Borgia. Here. Mr. Burrows. Mr. Guilford. Here. Mr. Kaplowitz.
Present.
Ms. Marcotte. Ms. Myers. Here. Ms. Perez. Mr. Ryan. Ms. Shimsky. Here. Mr. Smith.
Here.
Ms. Spreckman. Mr. Testa.
Here.
Ms. Williams. Mr. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Chairman.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Harkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I would move the consent agenda with the following suggested revisions. On page 10, number 42, please add the Committee on Legislation. On page number 19, item number 1, eliminate Committee on Environment and Energy. Please add Committee on Community Services and Committee on Legislation. On page 22, item 17, please eliminate Budget and Appropriations. It should only be Committee on Public Safety and Security. On page 22, number 19, please eliminate Public Safety and Security and add Committee on Government Operations. On page 24, item number 26, please add all legislators. And on page 25, number 35, that is submission is from Legislator Shimsky, as is on the following page, number 36. Should also be from Legislator Shimsky. So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Harkin. Mr. Mazzano. Thank you, Mr. Mazzano. Mr. Williams.
I'm in agreement.
All right, members, we are on consent. Mr. Harkin for the minutes approval.
At this time, I move the minutes of the Monday, March 11th meeting that was held at 7 p.m.
Members without objection, so ordered. Before we start public comment, Madam Clerk, we just certainly all want to keep in mind about the explosions at the Boston Marathon, keeping a framework for all the things that we're going through tonight. Let's make sure we keep our comments public with that in mind. Madam Clerk.
Members without objection.
For public comment, each speaker shall have 3 minutes. I'll call the names of the speakers and ask that you please come down the aisle to my left. First speaker is Paul Feiner, Chuck Lesnick, Marlene Zark, Regina Ryder.
Mr. Chairman and members of the legislature, first I'd like to thank County Legislator Mary Jane Shimsky for working very hard to make Jackson Avenue much safer as a road, and I'd like to thank the Greenberg delegation and the county legislature for their support of this important initiative. In 2012, there were 65 accidents on Jackson Avenue. The year before, there were also more than 60 accidents on Jackson Avenue. Every year for many years, we've had many, many accidents on Jackson Avenue, so the road is definitely unsafe. The proposal that we in the town are very supportive of would straighten out an S-curve along Jackson Avenue, near Jackson Avenue and North Sprain Road. And once the road is straightened, it would be much safer for residents and many motorists who use Jackson Avenue to get to Costco, Stu Leonard's, Home Depot, and Ridge Hill. The town of Greenberg, the villages of Ardsley and Hastings received $5 million after the Ridge Hill lawsuit settlement to make safety improvements on roads impacted by the Ridge Hill development. We believe that this safety improvement is one of the most important safety initiatives that is being pursued in 2013. The resolution that you are asking for that has the support of the town would request the drafting of state legislation to alienate a small strip of parkland along the Jackson Avenue border of Sprain Ridge Park, a strip needed to straighten out the S-curve along Jackson Avenue, and this is necessary to reconfigure the Y intersection at the corner of Jackson and North Sprain. Once the state proceeds with the legislation, the county and the town will be able to work together to implement the requests that we're asking for. We also believe that this safety improvement is very important because Yonkers is now planning another major development, 255,000 square feet of additional retail to be built at the Austin Avenue development in Yonkers, and they proposed 400 units of residential apartments at the site. It's crucial that Jackson Avenue be made safer, because if it's not made safer, it would be impossible to even consider any other increases at the Austin Avenue development. So I thank you for your consideration and look forward to working with you on this important initiative. Thanks again.
Chuck Lesnick.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, Chairman, legislators. This is kind of scary. I think bipartisan spirit has broken out. I understand that even in this chamber and in the Yonkers City Council, we may all be united on this issue. I hope what I say tonight doesn't screw it up for anybody. I did circulate this amongst the Yonkers City Council members, and so far 4 of the 7 have responded affirmatively that they want to be added on, and we only need 4 out of 7, but we will hopefully get all 7. The mayor has indicated he'd be supportive. Also listening to what Supervisor Feiner said, anything that Yonkers can do to cooperate with Greenberg to reduce any potential litigation in the future of any or real estate development projects, it's good that we work cooperatively. I too thank Legislator Shimsky for calling my attention to this and her help in drafting the resolution that the Yonkers Council will be considering at rules tomorrow and at our meeting a week from tomorrow. And it says essentially, whereas tens of thousands of residents of the city of Yonkers regularly travel on the portion of Jackson Avenue located in the town of Greenberg, particularly the portion extending, whoops, I lost that. That's the problem with these blackberries, right? That 14-minute gap. Whereas the portion of Jackson Avenue extending from the intersection of North Sprain Road on the east to the entrance of Sprain Ridge Park on the west is unusually dangerous to motorists, with 65 major accidents and 2 fatalities in the 2012 calendar year. And whereas 2 interconnected road improvement projects, the straightening of the S-curve extending from the entrance to Sprain Ridge Park to the west, the intersection of North Sprain Ridge Road to the east, the reconfiguration of the Y intersection at the corner of North Sprain Road and Jackson Avenue to the traditional T intersection with the traffic light will make Jackson Avenue much safer for those traveling on it. Whereas the City of Yonkers recognizes that it has an interest in the safety of its residents who travel the portion of Jackson Avenue in the town of Greenberg, including the portion extending from the intersection with North Spring Road on the east to the entrance to Spring Ridge Park on the west. And whereas the town of Greenberg and the county of Westchester are currently in negotiations to request and approve a home rule message alienating a strip of parkland along the northern portion of Spring Ridge Park to enable the straightening of the S-curve extending from the entrance to Spring Ridge Park on the west to the intersection with North Spring Road on the east, and the reconfiguration of the Y intersection at the corner of North Spring Road and Jackson Avenue to the traditional T intersection with a traffic light to take place, and therefore be it resolved that the City of Yonkers supports the completion of straightening, yada, yada, yada. The gist here, my time is up, is that this is money that's actually being paid for by the developer, Rich Ratner, and it's time limited. So we don't have time to waste before we lose that, and we'll never get it again. In this era of scarce government resources, please act quickly. Thank you.
At the corner of North Spring Road and Jackson Avenue to the traditional T intersection with a traffic light to take place, and therefore be it resolved that the City of Yonkers...
Good evening, my name is Marlene Zarfis, and I'm the Fair Housing Director at Westchester Residential Opportunities. WRO is a nonprofit housing counseling agency whose mission is to promote equal, affordable, and accessible housing throughout our region. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight in support of co-op disclosure legislation. Under current law in Westchester County, co-op boards may turn down a financially qualified applicant or refuse to interview a financially qualified applicant without providing a reason for the rejection. They may also refuse to provide a decision, either pro or con, for as long as they choose. Co-op disclosure legislation would require timely notification of the board's decision and disclosure of reasons for denial to those turned down. The absence of co-op disclosure law hurts both would-be buyers and sellers. When a potential buyer is turned down, he or she is left in the dark about the board's reasoning. He or she doesn't know why they can, whether they were turned down because there's something wrong with their finances, with their references, did they perform badly during the interview, or is the rejection a result of the forum's decision to exclude them based on a protected class, perhaps because they have children, or because they're a person of color, or because they are people who have disabilities. Additionally, the long delays in notification from the board of directors can mean the loss of a mortgage offer for the bank. Likewise, the seller of the unit is left hanging and has to continue to pay maintenance fees without any idea of how many additional offers may be declined by the board or what the selection criteria may be. The efforts of the realtors representing both sides are also frustrated, and the agents are left without any knowledge of whether the problem lies with their particular buyer, the size of the offer, or the particular preferences of a particular co-op board. Our current law is the result of a legal loophole that allows co-op boards to do what no other housing providers can do with virtual impunity: ignore the fair housing laws. This loophole is based on a fiction that because co-op owners own shares in the corporation rather than actual real property, they're not subject to the same fair housing laws as all other housing providers. In fact, the fair housing laws apply to co-ops, condos, private homes alike. However, it's significantly harder to detect discrimination, and it's thus more difficult to enforce the fair housing laws when co-op boards are legally entitled to stand behind this legal fiction. The ability of the co-op boards to operate in secret without any disclosure to applicants greatly reduces the capacity of the laws to protect people from discrimination in co-op transactions. This is the time to enact co-op disclosure legislation. Thank you for your time.
However, it's significantly harder to detect discrimination, and it's thus more difficult to enforce the fair housing laws when co-op boards are...
I just want to mention the three previous speakers. At least two of them are of political class, and the last one must be part of that protected class because I didn't see her down there waiting with the rest of us for an hour before we could come up here and speak. The rest of us had to get up in line and wait until 6:15 or 6:20 before we were able to come up here. So just a word to the wise. My name is Regina Riley. I'm from the 9th Congressional Legislative District. And I'd like to read a letter from Judith Anderson, who is the director, one of the co-directors and editor of the Hudson Valley Coalition for Life, March 17, 2013. Dear to the editor, this is the Gazette. Let me thank Celeste Tice of Yorktown for clarifying last week her position that abortion should be legal, safe, and private. Remember being told that abortion should be safe, legal, and rare? Well, 55 million legal abortions in America since Roe challenges rare as ever in the tent of the money-making hardcore abortion industry. And if it was the goal of women themselves, why now wash their hands of the ugly, hidden, and continually expanding world of abortion under the genteel parasol of privacy? Senator Stuart Cousins is currently leading the fight for passage of Reproductive Health Act that will now abandon SAFE as it seeks to enshrine and expand abortion as a fundamental right. It would, in part, allow for abortions beyond 24 weeks or 6 months, all the way up to 9 months, and promote late-term abortions, that is, the full length of the pregnancy, with little oversight or common sense protections for women. This attempt to further normalize infanticide completely ignores women. This legislation unbelievably seeks to eliminate the need for a medical doctor to perform the surgical procedure, even on minors, that is 11 years old, as some of the abortions are performed on 11-year-old girls. And still without parental consent, even parental notification. If this is what privacy is attempting to hide, women should be shouting instead of to protect their own survival. For more details about the Reproductive Health Act, listen online to Journal News Lowhead editorial spotlight with the Hudson Valley Coalition for Life on February 26th. Also listen to the senator on a panel defending RHA, in my opinion, the most disgusting piece of legislation ever promoted by a female elected to office. For more details about the Reproductive Health Act, listen online to Journal
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Harcum.
With the Hudson Valley Coalition for Life.
We are at the time for the public hearing.
Also listen to the...
This time, Mr. Chair, I would move that we close the regular order of business for the purpose of conducting one public hearing.
In my opinion, the most
Thank you, Mr. Harcum. Madam Clerk.
Ever promoted.
Notice of tonight's public hearing was published in the Journal News. I have proof of publication, which is available for inspection in my office. First public hearing is from the Committees on Government Operations and Budget Appropriations on the proposed modification to the Sawmill Sanitary Sewer District and the removal of one property consisting of 2 tax parcels in the town of Mount Pleasant. Mr. Chairman, I have no cards.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Harcum.
Notice of tonight's public hearing was published in the Journal News.
This time, Mr. Chair, would move to close this public hearing and resume our normal course of business.
Thank you. On the motion, Mr. Harcum, the public hearing is closed. Madam Clerk.
Understanding committees. Item 5221 from the Committee on Appointments is the appointment of James K. Burke as a member of the Westchester County Police Advisory Board for a term to expire
Thank you,
December
Madam Clerk.
31st, 2014.
Ms. Shimsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Appointments Committee, I interviewed Mr. Burke. He's had a long career in law enforcement, is very knowledgeable about law enforcement issues, and will make creditable contributions to the committee. Therefore, we recommend his approval here tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Shimsky. Members on this item. Madam Clerk. a short roll call.
Ms. Shimsky.
Ms. Shimsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Mr.
The
Harper.
Appointments
Yes.
Committee, I
Mr. Mazzano.
interviewed Mr.
Mr.
Burke.
Williams.
He's
Mr.
had a long
Chairman.
career in
Yes.
law enforcement,
Approved
he's very
16-0.
knowledgeable about law enforcement issues and will make
Item
creditable contributions
5747 from
to
the
the
Committee on
committee.
Appointments.
Therefore,
appointment
we
of Mark
recommend
McLean
his approval.
as a member of the Westchester
Thank
County
you,
Human Rights
Ms. Shimsky.
Commission.
Members
for
on
a
this
term
item.
to expire December 31st, 2014.
Madam
Ms.
Clerk.
Shimsky.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. The Appointments Committee also interviewed Mr. McLean.
Yes.
He has a long history of involvement with the local NAACP in New Rochelle. He also has done a lot of community outreach with them and in his work as a firefighter. He will also do an excellent job on his committee, and we recommend his approval here tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Shimsky. Members on this item.
Ms. Shimsky.
Unless there's objection, members will take the prior short roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 5853 from the Committee on Appointments is the reappointment of Edward Brancotti Jr. as an at-large representative of the Westchester County Board of Health for a term to expire December 31st, 2017.
Ms. Shimsky.
Mr. Brancotti has been serving his committee ably and well, and the Committee on Appointments recommends his reappointment here tonight.
Short roll call vote for the
Thank you, Ms. Shimsky. Members on this item.
So ordered.
Unless there's objection, members will take the prior short roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 5855 from the Committee on Appointments is the reappointment of William Davis Jr. as the local representative of the Westchester County Board of Health.
Mr.
for a term to
Brancotti
expire
has been serving
December
his
31st,
committee ably and well
2017.
in
Ms. Shimsky.
appointments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Davis's work also comes
Thank you,
very
Ms.
well
Shimsky.
recommended
Members
to
on
us,
this item.
and we therefore recommend his
Unless there's
approval here
objection,
tonight.
members will take
Thank
the
you, Ms.
prior
Shimsky. Members
short
on this
roll call
item.
vote for the approval of the item.
Unless there's objection, members will take the prior short roll call vote for the approval of the item.
5855 from the
So
Committee on
ordered.
Appointments is the Approved 16-0. Item 5428 from the Committees on Government Operations and Budget Appropriations, a bond act authorizing the issuance of
Thank you,
$350,000
Mr.
of
Chairman.
bonds in the
Mr.
county
Davis's
to
work
finance
also
capital
comes very well
project
recommended to us,
RGPO4
and we therefore
park-wide boiler replacement.
Thank you, Ms. Shimsky. Members
Ms.
on this
Myers.
item.
Yes, this is an item that was passed by the Board of, by the Committee on Budget and Appropriations. This $350,000 finances the in-house design and construction of the replacement of boilers and associated work at the county's Blue Mountain Reservation in Peekskill, Lasden Park and Arboretum in Somers, and Wilson's Woods Park in Mount Vernon. There is a great deal of efficiency to be attained by this replacement, and this is actually a 2-year program. I'll turn this over to Government Operations.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia.
Mr. Chairman.
As Legislator Myers stated, this is work that's going to be done in-house. The money is financing the parts associated with updating several boilers and the parks mentioned. It will provide for greater energy efficiency, and it's also part of the ongoing system to make sure that all the boilers in our county facilities are, in our county parks are operating at peak efficiency to save the county money on energy costs, and also to make sure that our assets are managed. The Government Operations Committee does recommend that this be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item.
System to make sure that all the boilers in our county facilities are, in our county parks are operating at peak efficiency to save the
Madam Clerk,
to save the county
a
money
long
on energy
roll call
costs, and
vote,
also to make
please.
sure that
Mr. Harper.
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano. Ms. Borgia.
Yes.
Mr. Burrows. Mr. Gelfart.
Aye.
Mr. Kaplowitz.
Aye.
Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you, Ms.
Ms.
Borgia.
Myers.
Yes.
Members
Ms.
on
Perez.
this item.
Mr. Ryan. Ms. Shimsky. Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Brickman. Mr. Testa. Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Madam Clerk,
Yes.
a long
16-0.
roll call vote, please.
Item 5697 from the Committees on Public Safety and Security and Budget and Appropriations, an act authorizing the county to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with the Lakeland Central School District, whereby the county will assign a uniformed police officer to act as school resource officer at the Walter Penn High School.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is an intermunicipal agreement whereby the county will assign a uniformed police officer as a school resource officer at Walter Penn High School for 4 years. Actually, this is retroactive going back to the opening of school last September 2012 through the last day of school in June 2016. The police officer would act as a school resource officer during this time, but return to working within the county in the months of July and August when the school is closed. For this, financially, the county school, the Lakeland School District will pay the county a yearly amount ranging from $115,000 up to $121,000 in the 4th year of the agreement. And this is something that this is a renewal. This has been done before and has been held as very successful. And Budget and Appropriation approved this. I will turn this over to Public Safety.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is also a revised draft from the original IMA. This draft includes language to allow the county to enter into a similar IMA with any school district, whereby the county will assign a uniformed police officer to act as a school resource officer for the district. There were no changes done to the legislation other than the terms of the agreement. So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Myers.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. Members on this item?
Chair, this is also a revised draft.
Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item.
To a similar IMA with any school district.
So ordered.
Whether the county will assign.
Approved 16-0. Item 5781 from the Committees on Government Operations and Budget and Appropriations. Bond Act authorizing the issuance of $2 million in bonds in the county to finance capital project.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. Members on this item?
Infrastructure repairs, parking structure, White Plains Complex.
Unless there's objection,
Ms.
members
Myers.
will take the prior long roll call vote.
This is a request for bonding that has been approved by the Committee on Budget and Appropriations for a $2 million project that actually covers 2 years, 2012 and 13, and is part of an ultimate $5 million in infrastructure costs. This includes 6 months worth of in-house design at $150,000 estimated and $150,000 construction management costs, followed by a 12 to 14 month period of construction at the cost of $1.7 million. And this is for the White Plains parking structure that is adjacent. This is the county's parking structure, which from all reports is in dire need of repair. And Budget Appropriation approves this. I pass this on to Government Operations.
Ms. Porter.
Thank you. In Government Operations Review, in addition to the items that Legislator Myers mentioned, we did hear that doing the 2 years together actually would provide some cost savings and efficiencies in some of the repair work that's included in this bond. It is part of a larger project that will refurb the entire parking structure over the course of 5 years. So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Porter. Members on this item?
Ms. Porter.
Thank you. In Government Operations Review, in addition to the items that Legislator Myers mentioned,
Madam Clerk, a long roll call.
Actually would provide some cost savings and efficiencies in some of the repair work
Yes.
included in this.
Mr. Mazzano.
Part of a
Ms.
larger
Porter.
project
Yes.
that will
Mr.
refurb
Burrows.
the entire parking structure over the course of 5 years.
Mr. Guilford.
Aye.
Mr. Kaplowitz.
Aye.
Ms. Marcotte.
Members on this
Ms.
item?
Myers.
Yes.
Ms. Perez. Mr. Ryan. Ms. Shimsky.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Breffman.
Madam Clerk?
Mr. Testa. Mr. Williams. Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
15-0. Yes. Item 5805 from the Committees on Government Operations and Budget Appropriations. Resolution determining there will be no significant impact on the environment from the removal of one property consisting of 2 tax parcels from the Sawmill Valley Sanitary Sewer District, 100 Palmer Lane.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is a resolution for the removal of, saying that there's no environmental impact from the removal of the these two tax parcels, one piece of property from the sewer district, and as to the following, which would be an act, the act would modify the Sawmill Valley Sanitary Sewer District by removing these two tax parcels. I will turn this over to Government Operations for discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia.
For the removal of...
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did hear from both the
these two tax parcels.
DEF and that there'd be no significant impact for either taxpayers or for the operations of the system with removal of these parcels, so we're recommending that it moves forward.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? We're on discussion, members, of items number 8, which is 5805, and item number 9, which is 5806. Members, Mr. Gelfar, hold up one sec. Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the items. So ordered. Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item?
Approved 15-0.
We're on discussion, members, of items number 8, which is 5805, and item number 9, which is 5806.
Item 5806.
Members,
from the Committees on Government Operations and Budget Appropriations, an act to modify the Sawmill Valley Sanitary Sewer District by the removal of one property consisting of two tax parcels located in the town of Mount Pleasant.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, as discussed, so moved.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Members, unless there's objection, we'll take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item.
Item 5806.
So ordered. Mr. Burrows, your pleasure on the last two items. All right, thank you, Mr. Burrows, on items 5805 and 5806. Mr. Burrows will be noted in the affirmative. Madam Clerk, item number 10. Ms. Myers.
Yes, as discussed, so moved.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Members, unless there's objection, we'll take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item.
from the Committees on Government Operations and Budget Appropriations.
So ordered.
A bond act authorizing the issuance of $100,000 in bonds of the county to finance capital project RMUS3 Muskie Farm Infrastructure.
Ms. Myers. Madam Clerk. I'm sorry, Ms. Borgia, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a project to update the public restroom facilities at Muskie Farm, which is a very popular recreation facility used especially by many young families and young children. The bond is for $100,000 to fund the design, which is expected to take about 6 to 8 months because there are some environmental concerns. It needs both DEP and Department of Health approval. During the design phase, which will be pursued. The park currently has approximately 140,000 visitors, and during the weekend there's a rush of about 400 to 500 visitors, which makes the public restrooms very inadequate. The Parks Department had scheduled this for a 2015 construction, but they are thinking about the possibility of moving it up to next year. It is work because it will take out some of the fields that are currently used for a lot of the activities at Muskie. They want to schedule it around the recreational activities, and it's somewhat delicate. So there's a possibility that the work could actually, depending on how the design goes, that the work could actually be started next year instead of waiting for an additional year, because there is some urgency to this project. So Government Operations would like to move this, please.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? Mr. Harker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Far be it for me to miss an opportunity to talk about septic systems. But normally, in a construction project, you design a restroom, you build it, you hook it to the sewer, and you're up and running. Legislator Borgia was referencing DEP approval. This is in the New York City watershed, and all of the septic systems need to be approved by DEP as part of the watershed regulations. So in order to expand, the saturation fields are what's necessary, as well as an enlarged tank. So it's an issue in northern Westchester. We talk about it. in terms of housing, we talk about it in terms of commerce, we talk about it in terms of water quality, here we see in terms of our own county park. So this is an ongoing issue in northern Westchester, and we thank the Parks Department for handling it so sensitively.
Thank you, Mr. Harcum. Members on this item? The only note here is that certainly this is a project that's a long-term project for RMUS3, starting as early as 2000 and continuing on, which is basically how this particular project, capital project is modifications of the system. So, unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr.
For the
Harcum.
approval of the item.
Members on this item?
So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 5892 from the Committees on Government Operations and Budget Appropriations. A resolution setting a public hearing for the public project to rehabilitate the Ashford Avenue Bridge located within the villages of Ardsley and Dobbs Ferry, and the public project to rehabilitate the entrance and exit ramp between Ashford Avenue to the northbound Sawmill River Parkway.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, I'd like to set this public hearing for May 20th at 7:30 p.m. And I will turn this over to Government Operations to discuss this.
Nope, it's just set in the public hearing. May 20th. And there's a reason we're giving it extra time. It's not the next meeting. Ms. Borgia, maybe we can clarify the reason that it's not going to the next meeting.
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is involves because there's a number of agencies and levels of government involved in the Ashford Avenue Bridge Rehab project. The federal notice requires a certain amount of time, and May 20th is the date that is our first legislative date that's appropriate for the passage of the notice time.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia, for the clarification. Members, unless there's objection, we'll set the public hearing for May 20th at 7 p.m. with the prior, excuse me?
The legislation says 7:30.
7:30, I'm sorry. May 20th at 7:30. Unless there's objection, members, prior law roll call vote. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 5893 from the Committees on Public Safety and Security and Budget Appropriations. An act authorizing the county to amend an intermunicipal agreement with New Rochelle for the implementation of the Stop DWI Control Data Master Project by increasing the max dollar amount by an additional $3,100 for the period from January 1, 2012 through December 31st, 2015.
Ms. Myers.
Yes, this is I'd rise to make a motion to approve this increase. This is an amended IMA, actually, with the City of New Rochelle for the implementation of their Stop DWI program. The reason for the additional funding, the $3,100, is because New Rochelle is actually the home to many, many proms, and we're starting to enter prom season for many of the high schools in the area, and they have found that because so many of these prom locations are located in New Rochelle, all in sort of the same beach area, that they are able to do a very, very effective Stop DWI controlling along the roadway to the prom sites, to the different country clubs. And in order to be very effective at this, they see a need for an increase of $3,100, which actually gets added onto New Rochelle's special patrol allocation. So moved. I will turn this over to Public Safety for additional comments.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Perez.
They are able to do a
Thank
very,
you,
very
Mr. Chair.
effective Stop DWI.
As Legislator Myers stated, that the bulk of the Stop DWI details for proms in New Rochelle, which covers the period from April through June. 3 years ago, the IMA was signed with various municipalities to reimburse them up to $8,400 per year for their participation. And the program is funded by monies collected from the individuals who are arrested for drinking and driving.
Ms. Perez.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members will take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
3 years ago, the item was signed. Item 5893 5941 from the Committee on Legislation, a proposed resolution requesting New York State legislation to alienate parkland in order to make improvements on Jackson Avenue.
Thank you, Ms. Perez. Members on this item? Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Unless there's objection, members will
This
take
is
the
the,
roll call vote for the
for
approval
us,
of the item.
beginning of a process that we need to have on Old Albany in order to accomplish necessary improvements. This has been worked on for quite some time. It's been in the very capable hands of our colleague, Mary Jane. And at this point,
Mr.
I'm
Ryan.
going to turn the conversation over to her. This is the, she can explain in great detail a little bit about the background and the need for this particular legislation to make these improvements possible.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Ms. Shimsky.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your leadership too, Chairman Ryan. You've been very helpful working through the some of the rough spots over the years on this. This is a part of a series of traffic improvements that will be taking place on Jackson Avenue in Greenburgh. Jackson Avenue is partly in Greenburgh, partly in the city of Yonkers.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Ms. Shimsky.
It's one of the main east-west thoroughfares in southern Westchester County, which everyone knows is a very urbanized area. However, if you look at pictures of Jackson Avenue and you angle your camera just right to focus in on the trees, it looks like something in one of the more isolated parts of one of the more isolated communities in the northern tier. It is a road system which has been outpaced by the urbanization around it. We definitely need more traffic. We need to change the road. There are going to be two sets of repairs. One is straightening out an S-curve that extends from the entrance to the County Park Springbrook Park to North Spring Road. The second part is going to be the reconfiguration of the intersection at North Spring Road and Jackson Avenue from a Y intersection with yield signs, which it is at the present time, which results in an untold number of accidents and near misses and resulted in a fatality several years ago, to a traditional T intersection with a traffic light. As I said, the amount of traffic on this road has increased tremendously over the last couple generations, and especially over the past decade. The road repairs are going to be paid for by the Ridge Hill developers as part of the lawsuit settlement with the town of Greenburgh and the villages of Ardsley and Hastings on Hudson. So what does Westchester County have to do with all of this? In order to do the straightening of the S-curve, which is necessary in order to do the Y intersection as well, we need an alienation of a very narrow strip of parkland along the northern border of Sprainridge Park. The town of Greenburgh has worked out 3 possible land swaps, which the state generally expects when a parkland alienation takes place. This has been the culmination of 9 years of effort on the part of many members of my community to try to make this road a safer place. And it took a long time to work out, but I'd like to also thank Deputy County Executive Kevin Plunkett, who several months ago brokered a tentative agreement on this, and has been doing yeoman's work in keeping this on track. Excuse the transportation pun there. I've spoken with a number of you, not all of you. I know that from what I can tell, this body understands the need for these improvements and is willing to continue working with the town and the villages to make them happen. And on behalf of my constituents and all residents in Greenburgh, Ardsley, and Hastings, I thank you very much for your cooperation.
Thank you, Ms. Shimsky. Members on this item?
I've spoken with a number of you, not all of you.
Yes, Ms. Shimsky.
Before we take a vote, I would just like to acknowledge and thank Jane Lawrence and Robert Kinney for appearing here tonight, bearing witness to the need for the repairs on Jackson Avenue, as well as Greenberg Town Supervisor Paul Finer and Yonkers City Council President Chuck Lesnick.
Thank you, Ms. Shimsky. Members on this item? It is important, as the council president was pointing out, there is money that is tied up with this particular item. Ms. Shimsky, your leadership in this and ensuring that your municipalities were going to continue to be able to expend that money is something that people may not know and recognize, but I do know that you have worked with the developer to make sure that the river towns were able to continue with their traffic improvement money and not lose that. So people need to have that recognized. Members, unless there's objection, we'll take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Municipalities were going to continue. Approved 16-0. Item 5194 from the Committees on Government Operations and Budget Appropriations, bond act authorizing the issuance of up to $350,000 of bonds in the county to finance capital projects.
Members, unless there's objection, we'll take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. Ms. Myers. So ordered.
Yes, this is $350,000 bonding legislation to design a new maintenance building at the Dunwoody Golf Course in Yonkers. This maintenance building has not been updated since it was built in 1955, and with irrigation work going on at the same time, this will provide a very efficient design and eventual construction in 2014. It will provide for more environmental energy efficiency. It will also provide cover for the golf carts and provide more security for physical assets of the county. I will turn this over to Government Operations for more discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In addition to providing cover, this increases the size of this building and allows pieces of equipment that are currently stored outside to be stored internally. Also provides for an opportunity to do a more environmentally sound care of equipment, such as washing and cleaning the equipment that will be now housed inside.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia.
And which will, of course, prolong the life of the equipment that is stored now outdoors. That decreases the useful life of equipment, of course, because it's subject to the elements. So this is also a sound for that reason too, and Government Operations would like to recommend that this move forward.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members, we'll take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item 5468 for the Committees on Government Operations and Budget Appropriations, a bond act authorizing the issuance of $370,000 of bonds of Westchester County to finance capital project RLAS 5.
Unless there's objection, members, we'll take the prior long roll call vote for the item.
Yes, this too is for the design through a consultant of the building roof, the heating, the windows, and other areas in the main house, and the Chinese Friendship Pavilion at Lasden Park, which is located in Somers. This park is also home to the Westchester Veteran Memorials, which will be reopening on May 18th. And the hope is that this will indeed provide for greater environmental efficiencies and improvements for the park building itself. I will turn this over to Government Operations.
Thank you, Ms. Myers. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is another one of our very well-loved and well-used parks. The anticipation is that the upgrade of this building will enhance the experience for both the items mentioned by Legislator Myers and for the park in general. It is part of a multi-year project, this being the first portion of the enhancement work that's to be done at this park, and Government Operations thoroughly reviewed this and would like to make a recommendation on its move.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Members on this item? Unless there's objection, members, we'll take the prior long roll call vote for the approval of the item. So ordered.
Approved 16-0. Item S.
This being the first portion of
Item 6053 from the Committees on Appointments, Legislation, and Government Operations. An act calling for the creation of a Westchester County Local Development Corporation.
Unless there's objection, members.
Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The item.
The act before you ratifies the January 30th, 2012 incorporation now as amended of the Westchester County Local Development Corporation. Let me just touch on a couple of items before I turn this over to Legislative County Board. The act confirms that the Westchester County Local Development Corporation may issue debt obligations to finance projects of 501(c)(3) not-for-profit corporations within Westchester County. Relative to the LDC's power to issue bonds and notes and a variety of other obligations, it's important for us to point out again this evening that these will be secured solely by revenues of the project, for example, and not those of the Westchester County LDC or the county. Again, let me make that a little bit clearer. And this is a very key point in the board's consideration proposal. The county and its taxpayers are not liable for the payment of principal and interest on any of the obligations of the Westchester County LLC. So it stands to reason that these need to be good credits in the first place. It's on that strength that they actually get into the market and have a successful issue to raise the money that they will need to finance the project. Just to conclude, at a time when we're looking at what's turned out to be a long, protracted economic recovery, we have an interest certainly in growing the economy here locally. The IDA law, which used to take care of not-for-profits and put them in a position to finance projects, and that was amended a few years back, they were no longer able to do that. And so this particular entity, the Westchester County LDC, makes that possible once again. And initially what you're looking at is the benefit of new construction. We're in an area where we'd like to give a boost to our construction industry. These projects will help create jobs. So initially it's the construction jobs on the site, and then obviously the hope is for, as the project is completed and the not-for-profits operation moves into it, there's a great likelihood that that also comes with permanent employment for the individuals that are in that expanded facility, or in some cases in the facility. So we had a very good process running here. The cooperation of two of your board's committees, government operations, actually jumped out and took this first under Catherine's able leadership, and I'd like to pass this over to her for her to conclude the discussion on this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Ms. Borgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Legislator Ryan said, this was a very thorough process. The process began, as Legislator Ryan mentioned, with the creation of the LDC last year, and through the operations of the LDC, it became apparent through the advice of Labor Council for some of the organizations that came before the LDC, and also from New York State Authority's Budget Office, which is the oversight organization in the state that provides oversight for local development corporations here in our state, that it would be useful to amend the Articles of Incorporation so that the authorization for the creation of the LDC had the approval of the Board of Legislators. The LDC allows our nonprofits here in Westchester, non-for-profit corporations that also have 501c3 tax-exempt status, to go through the process of vetting by our local development corporation, and then which then allows them to borrow at a tax-free rate. As Legislator Ryan said, this is something that requires the market to believe that the borrowing for the capital projects and or for the refinancing of debt it's what this is typically used for, is a credit-worthy project, and the full faith and credit of Westchester County does not stand behind any of these deals. It is the market drives whether or not the organization is able to finance the capital projects that they want. Many legislators who were involved in working on this, especially Legislator Kaplowitz, who sort of brought this back to the legislative process, as well as many of our other colleagues, believe that this is a very useful tool for our Westchester nonprofits. We do believe that this will be an economic generator because it will create more construction and capital projects, but we also think it's useful for our nonprofits here in Westchester County to have this ability to increase their operations, their organizations, to have this tool in order to do that. It is for the organizations that we typically fight for as a board of legislators in our communities. It's a nice opportunity to give them this tool that was made available once these types of projects could no longer go through IDAs. So government operations spent a lot of time on this, first on our own as a committee and then in a joint committee with legislation. There were a lot of people who worked very hard on this. It's quite a painstaking process. There were a lot of questions that came through and wound up being answered. And I would like to also thank members of the administration, particularly Eileen Miltenberger, who really spent a lot of time with us making sure that the legislation reflected exactly the wants and desires of all the legislators on both sides of the aisle. And I think it wound up, even though it was somewhat lengthy and certainly excruciating at times, it wound up giving us a very good product in the end. So I, as Chair of Government Operations, I'm really happy to move this piece of legislation forward.
Thank you, Ms. Poyser. Members on this item.
The legislation reflected exactly the wants
Mr. Williams.
all the legislators on both sides of the aisle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to stand to, first of all, let me commend both committees for the work that they've done. I will not be supporting this legislation tonight, not because I do not believe in LDCs. I believe LDCs serve very laudable goals and can make some great achievements, particularly when they are set up or established in a way to assist not-for-profit entities. I do have some concerns that I raised during the process, and those concerns were not addressed. I'm referring now to an email I sent back in March 26, 2013 to the Chief of Staff, Paul Rose, concerning, and I laid out the questions that I really wanted to get answered. And this legislation came about because there was an opinion issued initially by the law firm Peabody that said that neither the creation of the LDC nor the issuance of bonds by the LDC requires consent or approval of the county board of legislators. We found out afterward that had to be amended, and that's why this legislation is being amended. However, there were some points that were raised in that memorandum that I wanted to get clarified, and I want to just put those points of record. In the first line, the memorandum relies on a revenue ruling issued by the Inside Revenue Circle, Revenue Ruling 57-187. And on page 4 of the memorandum, the first line of the opinion requires that the entity, quote unquote, is formed after the governing body of the political subdivision has approved this creation. Now, I know that the memorandum is relying on the ruling, and since the LDC was not formed after our vote, because we're voting now, and it's in existence, I wanted to get a sense of how does this particular sentence in that memorandum, legal memorandum, reconciles to our action here tonight. I didn't get an answer to that. The next sentence in the memorandum states that the board of directors must be elected and controlled, quote unquote, by the governing body of the political subdivision. If you look at how this particular Article 3 of the legislation we're voting here tonight, the governing body does not elect and control the board of the LDC. Now, there might be an explanation for why that is relevant, but it's not. It has not been answered. that question has not been answered. The question comes directly from the memorandum, the legal memorandum we received. The third concern I had was with respect to the provision in the, I think it was Article 1, Section 2, that provides that the LDC would provide financial assistance in form of exemptions from real property taxes, mortgage reporting taxes, and sales and use taxes. Now, I didn't see anywhere in the memorandum that was issued by Nixon body that spells out the powers of the LDC. That power being was not spelled out in that memorandum, was not mentioned. And I want to talk a little more about that, but the final question I wanted to get answered in connection with the I didn't see any memorandum was what's called the TEFRA approval, basically. And what that means is that under Section 147F of the Internal Revenue Code, that the memorandum sets out, concludes that the county executive was called the applicable elected representative to approve the issuance of taxes and bonds by the LDC. And that would require, there's a process that the Internal Revenue Code sets out, require public hearings and so forth. Since we were amending this certificate of incorporation, I wanted to find out how does that provision work? Who has that responsibility now as the elected, what's called elected representative to approve the issuance of the taxes and bonds, and whether that process would be the same or whether it would change and give us the obligation to do so. These questions, I believe, they're not burdensome. They are questions that arises out of the memorandum that was issued to us, and I think I was entitled to an answer. And I elected representative questions were important to the issue, not to anyone else. I would have preferred if we had set up a new entity rather than amend the present entity. Why I believe that is that we would have been able to cure all of the potential issues that could arise and actually start fresh. But given that we decided not to do that, to go to amendment, I think that we needed to kind of take a look back and set the parameters as if we had started afresh. And these questions would have been the kind of questions that would have been raised. But I want to go to the question now about the granting of tax exemptions under Article 1, Section 2, to agents, given that power to the LDC. I've looked at several of these certificates of incorporation for many LDCs, and I've yet to find any of that with that provision. I also looked at the State Attorney General's, the State Controller's Office has a pamphlet on LDC, municipal use. I put local development corporation and other entities, and it lays out really the kind of powers that an LDC really has, and it goes through the issuance of bonds, leasing property, etc. Nowhere in here does it say that it has the power to grant exemptions to anyone else. So my concern is that granting that power does affect not only the county taxes, but each of us represent municipalities, school taxes, municipal taxes, village taxes. Has anyone checked with the municipalities to see whether or not they would agree with having their tax base reduced? My question, and one of the questions I asked, was whether that provision only relates to county taxes. Because I was sure that all of us who represent the municipality would want to at least communicate with our municipality and say we're going to vote on a provision. We're going to vote on creating an entity that is a non-governmental entity, that we're putting in the certificate of incorporation. We're empowering that entity to grant exemptions, which is going to impact your tax roll. Your school taxes are going to go down. Your municipal taxes.
I think we owe them, we owe the municipalities at least notice as to what we're doing. I don't know whether that notice was given, and I think that we were obligated to do that, to give them at least notice. Now, I understand that there is a notion that because the non-for-profits have exemptions, that having a provision that says we will grant them exemptions are not harmful. But if they do have exemptions as of right, then you don't need to have a provision in the corporation saying that this LDC can grant exemptions. And secondly, they do not have exemptions as of right. The exemptions that they have are dependent upon the use of the property. The use of the property has to be exclusively used for charitable taxes and purposes, exclusively. And there's a case, there's Lackawanna Community Development Corporation versus Housekeeping Court of Appeals case that made that very clear in 2009, that the rights that were, the exemptions are not exclusive. The municipalities, the local municipalities can reverse those exemptions if they do not feel that the entity is using the property in the way that it is intended. And that is the law. If you look at section 4, the real property tax law, 420-A, actually addresses that issue. I just think that we needed to make sure that if we're adding a power into a certificate of incorporation that gives the, and that power, let me put it, the powers under the LDC comes from section 1411 of the not-for-profit laws. And if you look at 1411, and I have it here, there is no provision in that section. The powers are set up in subdivision 3 and subdivision D. And there's no provision that in these subdivisions that says that the LDC has authority to grant tax exemptions to anyone. And I just think that that's a problem. I have the material, I have a paper case here, I have if anyone wants to take a look at it, they're welcome. But I just want to say that, again, I have no objections to LDCs. I believe that LDCs are good entities, and I think that they can serve public good, particularly where we're trying to fund not-for-profit. I'm just concerned and want to make sure that all of the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted when we go down this road to and do it. I would prefer we do it right, and I don't think there's no aspersions on my colleagues, because I believe that they have done yeoman's task in trying to get all these questions answered. But I believe that particularly the question relating to the exemptions, that is very problematic, because it doesn't only affect the county, it affects other municipalities, and can be a problem. So for those reasons, Mr. Chairman, I will not be able to vote in the affirmative on this legislation tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Maizano has preference. Mr. Maizano. Okay, Mr. Kaplowitz. Okay, Mr. Kaplowitz is yielding back to you, Mr. Maizano.
Okay, well, you probably figured I might not say something proper that's going to help me out. Thanks, Mike.
I will not be able to vote.
Quickly, I just have a couple of points. While my friend from Mount Vernon certainly did a lot of research, my support for this is a little more basic. Since I first heard of the concept of the LDC for Westchester County proposal, I liked it for the following reasons. You probably figured I might not. The first one is, I think we all know, we all deal with not-for-profits a lot in our district. Quickly, since the crash of 2008, they're hurting. You can't talk to any leader of any not-for-profit in Westchester. They'll all tell you since 2008, contributions have been down, it's hard to raise money, and also their governmental support is dipped as well. So not-for-profits tell you that all these not-for-profits are doing really good services in Westchester County. They're having a tough time to get by. So when you hear those stories, you say, I want to help. We certainly do help many not-for-profits through our budget process every year, but of course we all know we don't have enough money for taxpayer dollars to help all the not-for-profits as much as we want. So we have to make tough choices here in the budget. So when I heard this proposal, a way for not-for-profits to borrow money at a lower cost, I said, wow, this is great. Here is a way for the government to help not-for-profits. So we're not even using taxpayer dollars. We're just providing a mechanism, a means to help not-for-profits in Westchester County so they can save money on their borrowing money. So to me, that was attractive. That was attractive from the first day I heard it. And I understand that both our committees on our board and legislators want to do their due diligence, as they should. And I do think a lot of the issues that Legislator Williams laid out were discussed in the committees. Maybe not all the answers weren't perfect. But I do think a lot of this stuff was discussed. I think the committee did an excellent job. The two chairs did an excellent job. Legislator Caplitz and Barker worked very hard on this. I applaud all the legislators that were involved in this effort. But I think at the end of the day, we have a pretty good product here that's going to help not-for-profits in Westchester County. And that's really our goal, right? We're all here for the same reason. We want to help people. We want to help entities in this county. We try to find ways to help them. And I think this LGC proposal is a way to help not-for-profits in Westchester. That's attractive to me. I have them in my district. We all do. And I'm glad we're going to pass this tonight. I'm going to vote for this. I appreciate the fine work in a bipartisan way from all the legislators. And I look forward to this to pass. And look forward to see the real results of this LGC as it helps not-for-profits in Westchester. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maizano. Mr. Kaplitz.
So comments will be brief. A number of us have been working on this for over a year, and just to rationale, as it was clear and then further cemented in the committees. On a big picture basis, this is one of the tools available to us that, if used correctly, would save significant dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars a year in interest costs to entities, nonprofits. Think universities that want to expand, think hospitals that want to put on emergency areas, think nursing homes that might want to refinance existing bonds. And we really broaden this through our good work and diligence, so that there are even examples. There's a dammed up, pent-up usage that's going to occur over the next one day through the next number of months that's going to demonstrate time after time how these nonprofits are going to save a lot of money and are going to put a lot of people to work. Really create a lot of construction jobs, a lot of activity, and when you go through tough economic times, that's quite important. It's always important to do that. So this is a good tool to help nonprofits. On the substance, I'm going to leave it, but I want to thank, and my purpose of standing is to really start by thanking the two chairs of the two committees who worked really, really hard on this. And working hard is not in of itself, because it's good at the end of the day, maybe you get tired, but when it's hard work and it's focused and it comes up with a product, then it's productive. And that's in fact what Legislators Chair Georgia and Chairs Ryan led us in, and I'm proud to serve directly on one. And I think at this point, you might even have a membership card for government operations. If I do want to sneak into a meeting, she might think that I may be actually on the committee. So I might want to stop, or I might be invited to do that, or perhaps not, as the case has been. But the work that was done, and all the legislators, to Mr. Harcum, to Legislator Shimsky, and to all the colleagues, Mr. Williams, I mean, really put us to the test and went through all this. And I will say, and put on the record, we're a legislative body, but we want to thank Kevin Plunkett and George Oros for their good work in working with us, for Eileen, as indicated, for Katie, and really, John F. Kennedy always says it, and I'll pull it out every once in a while. I think he doesn't always say it, he used to say it. John F. Kennedy, he did always say when he was alive and president, that failure is an orphan and success is time with many fathers and certainly many parents, and certainly there's a chance to stand up and say a lot of people really do some good work. And we in Westchester County get benefits long after we have done the due diligence to set this up. So, colleagues, thank you in advance for all of us, which is a really good thing to help a lot of nonprofits and therefore help us here. Failure.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplitz. Mr. Harcum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My colleagues who've spoken before me have said a lot of what I was going to say, so I too will be brief. I just want to say that in with this piece of legislation, the process worked. You know, once it became clear through the IRS ruling that validated the board was the governing body, we needed to go to work. We got to work swiftly and smartly. I think we put ourselves out there. We committed to the market at which we would get this done. So it was no longer just a local press that was looking at us, but seriously, the financial markets responsible for hundreds of millions in transactions were looking to this body. And there were a lot of people at that. We worked in a bipartisan fashion, from everybody named in the administration, people on this floor, the two chairs, Legislator Kaplowitz for being so passionate about this, Legislator Shimsky, our colleagues on the other side of the aisle. And let's not forget that we put important protections and made important improvements in this bill. Should not be unnoticed. It may not be a perfect bill, and we couldn't address every concern in this bill, but we improved transparency and accountability. We gave labor a seat at the table. So this is a piece of good work by a lot of people. The process worked, we worked, and government worked. And I think this is one instance when the people should be proud of their government, both the 8th and the 9th. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Markham. All the members, Ms. Shimsky.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I will be second to none in my praise for everyone who helped make this possible. It is a good bill. It will allow scores of millions of dollars in capital projects to move forward, which will hopefully help our building and construction trades, which are now facing unemployment in upwards and in some trades even exceeding 40%, not 1.4 but 4.0. There is one concern I do have about this legislation that I would like to put on the record tonight, that there is a provision in the amendments encouraging project labor agreements, which would be a help to the building trades. As I said, the terminology is encourage, not require. We will see in the next year how all of that plays out and how this works with our labor relations in our county and in our region. I, for one, am prepared to revisit slight adjustments in the future if need be. Thank you.
We will see in the next
Thank you, Ms.
year
Shimsky.
how all of that
Other
plays
members.
out and
Okie doke.
how this
Well,
works with
we want to all
the
thank
regulations in our county
legislative
and
chairs,
region.
Ryan and Borgia for their hard work in trying to steer through this process. We also want to thank members that started this particular item, which were legislators Borgia, Harcum, and Kaplowitz, which a memo of creating a legislation for the Westchester County Development Corporation, which was started on September 24th, 2012. So people should recognize that there was certainly a desire to create a local development corporation by the administration. I believe that was announced in January of 2012, and the legislation actually hit down here, one version of it in September of 2012, which was not dealt with, but this legislation that Mr. Kaplowitz, Ms. Borgia, and Mr. Harcum put in front of us was, and then there was some additional adjustments and time done. Everyone on this side of the aisle. good housing project that we know that's going to help satisfy our requirements under the housing stipulation agreement. That's going to be done on SUNY Purchases site, which the refinancing saves them some money. Saves them, I believe, $25,000 a month, something along those lines, which certainly could be helpful for them to pump into education, which is their main role. So, with that, Madam Clerk, let's have a long roll call vote, please.
Mr. Harkin.
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano. Borgia.
Yes.
Mr. Burrows. Mr. Gelford. Mr. Kaplowitz. Ms. Marcotte. Ms. Myers.
Aye.
Ms. Perez.
With that,
Mr. Ryan.
let's have a
Ms. Shinsky.
Aye.
Mr. Smith.
Yes.
Ms. Sprecher.
Yes.
Mr. Testa.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
No.
Yes. Mr. Cameron.
yes.
15, Mr. Kaplowitz. Motions, resolutions, and ordinances.
Members, before we get started again on this, we certainly want to continue to recognize, as we continue to get the news from up in Boston, that one of the two people that they have confirmed as fatalities was 8 years old. So, all right, let's go from
Mr. Chairman,
sure, Mr.
we do accept the motion to reconsider, just so we can put that to bed, because the LDC is going to be meeting and moving forward. We certainly do not want to upset that going forward.
I will take your motion on the reconsideration, Mr. Kaplowitz. A motion and a second, Madam Clerk. It's a motion to reconsider item 6053, which is item 16 on the board's agenda. A aye vote would be to reconsider. A nay vote would be not to reconsider. All right? Madam Clerk, long roll call vote.
Mr. Harkin.
No.
Mr. Mazzano. Ms. Borgia.
No.
Mr. Burrows. Mr. Gelford. Mr. Kaplowitz.
No.
Ms. Marcotte. Ms. Myers.
No.
Ms. Perez. Mr. Ryan. Ms. Shinsky.
Nay.
Mr. Smith.
No.
Ms. Spreckman. Mr. Testa. Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
No.
Motion fails 15-1.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Mr. Kaplowitz. Ms. Shimsky. Motions, resolutions, and call of the districts. Ms. Shimsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to add two names. The first one, there's a bit of a tragic demographic accident on our motions, resolutions, and calls of the district tonight. On Legislator Borgia's list, there is a Catherine Sheehan, who is a Maryknoll nun who lived up in her district, who passed away earlier this year. But I would like to add a second Catherine Sheehan, identical spelling. She was the 97-year-old mother of Greenberg Town Councilman Francis Sheehan. She was very years, and may she rest in peace. And I'm sure that at the very least the Greenberg legislators would want to be on, and others may as well. The second one is someone who is not political at all, but who touched the lives of many thousands of people in Westchester County. Dorina, D-O-R-I-N-A, DiLullo, D-I-L-U-L-L-O. She was very involved in the theater and dance communities, was involved in many companies across the county. She was a dance instructor both at Central Park Dance in Scarsdale and on Hudson, in Hastings on Hudson. To talk about her achievements and where she taught and what she did does not even begin to describe how much she meant to the children she taught. She met my daughter at kind of a fragile time in my daughter's young life, and she was hugely helpful in turning my daughter into the person she is today, at least the positive attributes. But the stories are legion, she treated every single child she dealt with as if they were the single most important person on earth. She did that with the grown-ups as well, and as testament to how much she meant to how many people. The attendance at the wakes and the funeral was just overflow every night, and overflow at the funeral. She packed a lot into the 44 years she was alive, and she leaves behind a husband and a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old son. And I'm sure that all of you would like to wish her family the best as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shinsky. I know that these will be added onto machines, the second machines. Okay. Ms. Perez. Wait. Okay, that's what I thought you meant. Ms. Perez. Anyone else? Mr. Smith? And I'm sure. Okay, thank you. All right. Ms. Myers.
Yes, I'd like to add onto the memorial resolutions the name of Daniel Hoffman, Hoffman, who grew up in Larchmont and was our nation's poet laureate from 1973 to 1974, following in the shoe steps of a former Larchmonter, Joyce Kilmer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mazzano.
I'd like to add a couple, Mr. Chair, in the name of Frank Michelli, name of Nicolina Shelton, who was a reporter in New Rochelle, and if you represented New Rochelle, you would know Nikki Shelton. She's about 4'9" with her camera running around events in New Rochelle, and a great lady and a lot of fun, and she passed today, I believe. And then also, I don't know if everybody knows, but a former county legislator passed. He represented my district. That was Robert Dorsey. He represented the Board of Legislators the 2 years before I came on, very ably served this county here in the Board of Legislators. Then he became a county employee in the Spano administration, and prior to that he served on the New Rochelle Planning Board, I believe the chair, and also was the city clerk in New Rochelle, so man, a lot of public service. Yeah, I believe all legislators should go on the Bob Darcy legislature, he was the county legislator, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mazzano. Mr. Harcum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Please add Legislator Kaplowitz along with me and Legislator Myers to Mary Elizabeth Sindrich, who's a sister of Mayor Mike Sindrich from Mount Kisco.
I believe that Mr. Ryan and myself will be added on that as well, and Ms. Borgia. Thank you. Mr. Kaplowitz.
Yes, I'd like to also join Legislators Myers, Harper, Jacobs, and Mazzano on passing of Robert Katie, who's the personal friend of New Rochelle.
And Mr. Williams as well. Mr. Ryan, are you on that? Mr. Ryan? All right. Other members, Ms. Marcotte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to add the name of Nicholas Falco. Nicholas Falco was a longtime resident of the town of Westchester, went over to Lyon, had a great many family members in town. I believe he also has family members in Legislator Myers District, and I believe she'd like to join me on that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Myers will be joining on that.
Could I also join in on with Legislator Mazzano on Kenneth Nixon, please?
Absolutely. Other members? There's a few people that in Mount Vernon, certainly with Legislator Williams, between Ray Williams and Oscar Davis, Mr. Dietrich, Bill Toon, and Rudy Ganga, Rudy Prasad, which is a surprise. Okay. And Ms. Breckman. Yes, Mount Vernon native, him and his brothers that were very, very popular as well. Ms. Breckman, I will join you on this Grippo. Okay. And certainly Mr. Crotty as well. Joe Crotty. All right, members. Any other business motions, resolutions, and call of the districts. I do want to note for the record in our communications we received this evening, we have two different communications from the county executive regarding the HUD proceedings. One was requesting the board adopt an act, that's item 48, and then item 77 is the actual act. Just wanted to note that for the record. Again, when we have actions that we want to do, we can figure out how to write laws to make them happen. We will have on just members, so we have this, we do have a CAL, Committee of the Whole, that is scheduled tomorrow to discuss this act number 77, and we'll also throw in Act 48 as well for the proceedings against HUD, which is the caption. Certainly is not specifically that. I think it's, Mr. Burrows pointed out, a little bit more refined than that. And members, we will be having a special meeting that we will schedule for next Monday, the 22nd. We're going to try to schedule it at 7. We might move it up just a tad bit earlier, but you'll get notice. But it is going to be on the 22nd, and a tad bit earlier, meaning that it might happen at 6 as opposed to 7, because it'll be the only item on the agenda should we happen to have that meeting. A necessity to do that after we have our CAL and Committee of the Whole tomorrow. So plan that for your calendars on the 22nd, right? Ms. Shimsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to add the name of Alan Salzman, S-A-L-Z-M-A-N, not to the resolutions list, he's still very much alive, to the list of people who attended on behalf of the Jackson Avenue road improvements.
Thank you, Ms. Shimsky. And again, there were so many people that worked on that. There's Yonkers Legislator Burrows, who is just going to have his name mentioned, and this was that on the road and the extension, that's a main thoroughfare for Yonkers as well, right? So Yonkers and Greenberg that we have to make sure to deal with. Members, if we all could please rise and observe a moment of silence for those mentioned in the memorial resolution, and including the folks up in Boston, as the challenges continue from the explosions at the Boston Marathon today. Mr. Harkin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move that we adjourn and reconvene on May 6th at 7 p.m.
Madam Clerk, a short roll call.
Mr. Harkin.
Yes.
Mr. Mazzano. Mr. Williams. Mr. Chairman.
Yes. On the motion, we are adjourned.